Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, here with another episode of Capping the Card, where I'm going to go through all 11 races on Saturday's Belmont at the Big A card, highlighted by 3 graded stakes races. I'm going to give you my top pick and my top value play for each. Now, before we get into that, want to make sure to remind you to press that like and subscribe button here on the NYRA Bets YouTube channel. Subscribing is completely free of cost and just notifies you every time a new video drops. And we have a lot of content coming for you. All the Breeders' Cup stuff, man. We got trainer by trainer videos looking at their historical success at the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar, and then diving into their top contenders this year. We got those already up for trainers like Bob Baffert, for Steve Asmussen, for Bill Mott. We have more coming as well for Todd Pletcher, for Chad Brown, for Aiden O'Brien, for Charlie Appleby, for Brad Cox. So we got a lot of those videos. We're going to have contender-specific videos looking at your top horses in the Breeders' Cup Classic. We're going to have long shot videos. Myself and Kaylee Shapiro are going to make one of those next week. We're going to have some post-draw reaction videos. We already have a pre-entries video up. So listen, if you need to get ready for the Breeders' Cup, this is your best place to do it. And, oh, by the way, we also have, obviously, videos like this, as well as a preview of the 2 stakes races taking place Saturday at Keeneland. So, like I said, make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. Now, premise to Capping the Card is pretty basic. We're going to go race 1 through 11. I'm going to give you my top pick. I'm going to give you my top value play in each race. Top pick is pretty self-explanatory. Value play, sometimes I think it's a horse that has a really good chance at winning, who's maybe 8-1, 9-1, 10-1, something like that. Other times it's a horse I think is just going to outrun their odds. I'll always call that out. And sometimes it's a horse that may be 12-1 that I go, I don't know if this horse can win, but this horse could run second or third and maybe enrich an exacta trifecta. So different ways to play things. Last week, we had a $52 exacta with our top pick and top value play, thanks to Cape Trafalgar and Two Eagles River. So we'll try to give out some nice prices here and try to connect people to some winning tickets. All right. Well, let's dive into the very first race. And we should say the weather up here in New York has been beautiful. It's going to continue to be very nice this weekend. It gets a little bit more chilly, but weather itself looks gorgeous. So let's go to the very first race, $90,000 maiden special weight for 2-year-olds going 6 furlongs on the dirt. And, you know, people who know me know I like to try to avoid playing chalk, but it's hard to get around number 1 rookie card in this race. A veteran of 2 career starts, lost in debut to Tip Top Thomas, and finished just ahead of Key Waden. Key Waden, I think, is a really nice horse for Chad Brown, who came back to win next time out. Tip Top Thomas, we saw, I thought, ran a really nice race in the Grade 1 Champagne, finishing second to Chancellor McPatrick. Based upon that, last time out, he goes off as the 2-5 favorite and loses at the wire to a very well thought of Brad Cox horse. Comes a time. And by the way, we're going to get to Cox later, but good Lord. He's winning 40% of his races up here. So losing to a Brad Cox horse there's no shame in that. Gargan's had a good meet up here. His horses have been running very live during the Belmont at the Big A meet, 10 for 22 in the exacta. So, he's been turning out some live runners. This one just looks so talented, has good speed from the inside. Dylan Davis remains aboard, 3-5. Listen, it's going to be a short price. I don't see a lot of other alternatives in this spot. You're probably going to have to swallow a short price. I debated about making the Chad, if you will, the value play, the number 4 Treaty of Rome. This horse is the logical alternative to rookie card. If you want to try to beat the 1, then you're probably going to want to use the 4 and then my value play the 6 to do it. Because I don't see much else in this race. And so I think the 4 Treaty of Rome, I get it. If you look at the pedigree standpoint, that one is a full sibling to a horse named Donna Volacci, who went out for Simon Callahan and ran a 91 Beyer speed figure in debut at Santa Anita several years ago, back in 2019. So has some clear precocity. That horse also went on to win the Santa Isabel. So, like I said, horse has precocity in the pedigree. The works have been very good. Flavian Pratt is aboard. Certainly looks to be a pretty serious contender in this race. If you think rookie card, maybe a little bit of a hanger, maybe a little bit of a hard luck horse that just likes finishing second, then Treaty of Rome makes a lot of sense to use. I wouldn't begrudge anyone for using that. But I would say if you're going to go Treaty of Rome in your sequences, then you just got to fade rookie card entirely. Then toss rookie card from your tickets. This is a single or fade situation. So the alternative or a value play that I think is there is the number 6 Graffiti Rider, which is the other Chad Brown debut horse. And I know this one doesn't have as much precocity in the dam side pedigree, but still was a half sibling to, or full sibling, I should say, to Army Times, who won second start out at Monmouth, and stepped up and ran in the Smarty Jones against horses like Il Miracolo and Cagliostro. Has won a couple of races, so there's still some solid pedigree there. And this one has been working, I would say, solidly, consistently. Irad Ortiz Jr. is up on the mount. We talk about the other Chad on the turf all the time. The other Chad on the dirt could certainly come through here. And I just think it's 5-1. You're maybe getting a little bit of value. Like I said, I don't really see much else in this race. The number 7, Griffin's War for Morley. There's not a lot there in the pedigree. The works do look solid. Belmont has been ice cold, which we'll talk more about with the number 3 at Lull. So that's a horse that I'm a little worried about backing at a price. So like I said, it does look like it's set up for rookie card who's got outstanding early speed to capture the very first race. Well, let's move to race number 2, which is an $80,000 allowance race going a mile and a 16th on the inner turf for 3-year-olds and up, filly and mares, state bred. A lot of conditions here. Where did I go here? I struggled with this race. And when I say struggle, I just spent a lot of time thinking about this race and looking at it, watching replays, looking at pace scenario. From a pace standpoint, this could be one of those paceless New York races because Saratoga Gaze for Kathleen O'Connell might just try to wire the field. Now, this horse won a $20,000 claimer at Meadowlands last time out. Does have a second place finish against this kind of same level of competition 4 back. If you go and look at that with Dylan Davis aboard, but doesn't have Dylan aboard anymore. That one, it has a lot of speed. Now, the other horse that might press this one is the number 9 Tourjet, who we'll get to in a second for Bill Morey with Eric Cancel aboard. That one went gate to wire last time out. So maybe that one now has shown better speed on the turf. That was the first turf effort. But it's interesting to see what the pace scenario is going to look like. It's one of the reasons I ended up fading Summer Whirl, but at the same time, Roagna, who's my top choice, is kind of the same style, which is more of a deep closer. One of the things I'll say about Summer Whirl, who's your morning line favorite for Grand Motion with Johnny Velasquez up, this horse gives herself a lot to do coming for home. I mean, we're talking double-digit lengths back each of the last 2 races, and admittedly has run against some much better competition, has finished 4th in the Susie O'Kane Stakes, and probably was primed to win last time out and just didn't get it done. Has been favored now 4 straight races and only won 1 of them. Starting to be able to become a little bit of a money burner. And I'm just going to look to the number 7, Roagna, for Harold James Bond. This one is been incredibly consistent. I mean, he's run between a 70 and 74 buyer speed figure in all 6 career starts. So you know what you're getting out of this horse. That number should be good enough to win this race. Has finished second once before at this level, has finished third once before at this level, has run against nice horses like an Awesome Check, who Summer World ran against in that Susie O'Kane and lost to. Javier Castellano up on the mount after a little bit of time away after that fall he suffered at Saratoga. So this one, I just think it may be the day to get it done. Also is a little bit more of a deep closer, but has maybe slightly better early speed, I think, than Summer Whirl, and maybe closes a little bit better too. So by just a narrow margin, I thought, well, maybe I'm getting a little bit of a better price on this one, especially considering how much money Summer Whirl tends to attract. So maybe this one actually floats up to like 5-2, and you're getting a little bit of value. But I think this one has a chance. And again, you go through it, has some excuses, it has had some issues at the start sometimes and has been hung wide at other times. I just think that's the right type of mount with Javi, who's back in the saddle, and good to see him back. As I mentioned with Tourjet, This one's facing winners for the first time, but I shouldn't say that. This one's facing allowance company for the first time. This one ran in 2 stakes races, actually, while still a maiden on the dirt. Former trainer Horacio De Paz switched this one over the turf, won the very last race of the Saratoga meet at 5-2, and took him gate to wire. Now, only earned a 61 buyer. That's going to need to get better. But Bill Morey claimed this horse. And Bill Morey, when he claims a horse, you pay attention because he's 35% over the last year claiming off the claim with a 267 ROI. He's won 25% of his mounts during this meet. He's 5 for 8 in the exacta with his runners during this Belmont at the Big A meet. 12-1. He's going to have to work out, she's going to have to work out the right trip from the far outside. But there's a lot to like here from a pedigree standpoint. I think the turf is where this horse is going to ultimately excel. There was a lot of intentionality about trying to get this horse on the turf for a while in the DePaz barn, but the races kept getting rained off. Eric can sell up. We saw Eric get a big win yesterday. He had been a little bit cold during this meet, but again, heating up maybe a little bit and has that outside post position, good tactical speed. I would imagine Eric's going to hopefully be aggressive with this horse out of the gate, have this horse sitting at least second to Summer Whirl or Saratoga Gaze, I should say, and go from there. But I think this one's interesting. The other horse that I will mention that if you're going to be playing your exotic, your horizontal tickets, I should say, number 1, Aunt Yola. That's a horse I'd probably include. That one is for Horacio De Paz with Kendrick aboard. This one's stretching out from sprinting to routing. Might just be able to get up there on the front end too. But so now that's kind of the flip side of it. Because if that horse decides to go along with Saratoga Gaze, along with Tourjet, now suddenly you might get a legitimate pace in a New York turf race. I know. I hope you didn't have a heart attack just hearing that. But if that happens, then it does really set up nicely for the 2 favorites in this race coming from well off the pace. All right, well, let's head to race number 3 on the card, which is an interesting $50,000 optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up, going 1 mile and 3/16. And it's a short field. It's only a 6-horse field. So there's not a lot of opportunity for big value, because I think there's a pretty significant drop-off when you get past really the top 3 choices. And ultimately, I landed on Black Rain as my top selection. This one just has some really good races to go back to. And I know the horse really tired last time out as your favorite, even money favorite, going 2 turns for the first time. I think it's notable that Pletcher is bringing this horse back at 2 turns and, in fact, stretching this horse out a little bit more. There's some other spots Pletcher could have spotted this horse into, some optional claiming or allowance company races that are maybe 7 furlongs or a mile, whether it's up here or down at Keeneland. So there were some other conditions he probably could have put this horse in. The fact that he's keeping this horse going long tells me that he thinks there's something there. Now, what's fascinating is this horse was ridden by Irad Ortiz Jr., all 4 career starts, broke its maiden second time out, lost to General Partner, who ran a monster race coming back from a long layoff against an allowance company up at Saratoga, but finished second that day and finished ahead of a horse, Assume Nothing, who came back to win next time out. And then, like I said, was your even money favorite last time out and faltered. Irad rode this horse every single time out. Irad's not aboard. Flavian Pratt takes over the mount, and Irad goes to my value play, the number 6 Unbridled Bomber, who is more of a deep closer, but who should like the distance, has won essentially at this distance before, and at the 1 mile and 3/16. And, it just seems like a horse that could appreciate, if this horse can run back to the way he ran last year, then he could really, I think, have something to say in this race at 7-2. Interesting that Irad picks up the ride here. I mean, Irad hasn't ridden this horse since last, 2 Novembers ago in 2022. And so it's been a minute since Irad has been aboard this horse, though notably that was at roughly the same conditions, at the same distance, at the same time of year, basically when he got that win 2 years ago. The horse does seem to have dropped off a little bit in 2024 compared to really its top form in early 2023, but Like I said, this one in a shorter field should be a lot closer than it has been recently. I think some of the larger fields has had this horse strung out a little bit more, sitting double-digit lengths back each of the last 3 times out. But like I said, a shorter field hopefully is maybe a little bit more compact. And I think going longer is actually beneficial for this horse. I don't know if the mile is what this horse wants to do. So Unbridled Bomber 7-2, I thought presented a little bit of value. The horse in between these two is the number 5 Digital Ops for Chad Brown. This one it's funny. This one is kind of the exact same MO as Black Rain. 4 career starts, broke its maiden second time out, lost to a really good horse in Game Warden the following time, and then really faltered last time out, not as the favorite, but as a 9-2 choice, and just looked completely cooked, turning for home and lost by over 20 lengths. So it's hard to really get excited about the 5 because the 5 and the 3 basically have the exact same MO. I think the 3 is more capable of running a better race. And like I said, it just shows the intentionality from Pletcher to keep this horse going long. So it tells me that he really does think this horse's future is at that distance. We'll see. But like I said, I just think Black Rain's hard to get around in this spot. Also, there's not a lot of pace in this race. It's a 6-horse field. And in all likelihood, your number 3 horse, Black Rain's just going to go out up front. And Digital Ops is probably going to sit second. And Unbridled Bomber, is going to be sitting a little bit further back. Maybe a horse like Winning on the Weekends for Jack Abrams, that horse might be sitting at something like 3rd or 4th in this race. That one's, could be interesting, but is coming out of easier races at Parks and not getting the job done. So it will be interesting to see how he steps up here. All right, well, let's head to race number 4 on the card, which is a $75,000 state bred maiden special weight race for 2-year-olds, going 6 furlongs on the dirt. And a couple of interesting horses here. Really like the number 1, Kenny B. This is a horse that lost to a horse, Man in Finance, who was a Danny Gargan runner in debut. And that horse just kind of had the perfect trip and overtook our horse, Kenny B, late in the stretch and pulled away. The important part was that Kenny B really kind of put away some of the other horses in the field, and there was really no contest for who was going to run second. That race has already produced a next out winner. Corvus came back, who finished 4th that day, and a little bit further back. And Corvus came back to win kind of the same conditions, maiden special weight race next time out. So that's promising to see that a horse that finished behind the runner that we have here today, Kenny B, came back to win. Dugan's had a good meet. Trainer David Dugan, 3 for 18, winning 17%. I like the fact that this one has a race under its belt. And I like the fact that this one broke from the inside rail last time. Has outstanding early speed, experience breaking from the rail, will break from the rail again. That's not going to be a new experience for this horse. I do think that matters. Sired by Complexity, a sire who I think has had a nice first crop, has started out really hot, maybe cooled off a little bit, but still you're looking at 17% winners in debut. That's not so bad. And a dam who's produced some really nice horses over the years in terms of just a lot of winners and a lot of really durable horses, to be honest with you, when you go back through and look at those numbers. And a dam who tends to produce pretty precocious horses. 1 winner in debut, but 5 of the 8 winners who've raced finished in the exacta in debut, including obviously Kenny B. So shows just there is some precocity early on with the pedigree. Definitely like that. I think this one could take another step forward and really kind of punch its ticket to getting the win this time out. Now, in terms of a value play in this race, the number 8 Joker on Fire for Bruce Levine. Javier Castellano up. I know we've mentioned Javi's name before already. This one finished second last time out. Now, there is a qualification here. This horse really took a step up last time out over a sloppy sealed track. Maybe the horse just likes the mud. That is distinctly possible. But what I will also say is if you look at this horse's general progression through 3 races, the horse has improved every race. Now, admittedly, last time out was a big improvement, but this horse in debut couldn't get to the lead, finished 17 lengths back. Second time out, the horse showed much better early speed, ultimately faded late to a kind of strung out field, which included 2 next out winners. and finished about 9 lengths back. So getting a little bit better. Last time out, got up there, was a part of the early pace scenario, and ultimately finished second after briefly taking the lead. So there's a progression here. Now, admittedly, like I said, the horse really popped on the sloppy sealed track. So maybe this horse just likes that surface. Not going to have that surface on Saturday, but I just think maybe fourth time out, this horse just keeps getting better. I know Bruce hasn't had the most success at this meet, just 1 for 16, 4 for 16 in the money. But this one with a 64 buyer speed figure, I feel like is one you got to at least take a little bit seriously. I think a lot of people are probably going to look to the outside as well. Sir Cartwright for Jeremiah Englehart. This one is, a Ford trainer in Jeremiah who knows how to get these horses ready first time out, has a lot of success doing that, has a lot of success with his 2-year-olds. My hesitation is that the dam has never produced a first out winner in 5 career foals. So that's an issue. The horse does have some nice works and has Irad Ortiz Jr. up is 6-1 on the morning line. Certainly would not begrudge anyone to go there, though I don't know if we're going to get 6-1 on the morning line when it comes post time. And then Chad's got a horse in here of Vekoma, who is 3-1 on the morning line, who is a nice horse, first out, a first foal from a Smiling Tiger dam. So we'll see. That one also looks pretty good. Flavian up. Flavian Irad can't win every race. That's kind of part of my logic here as well. And I do have to give a shout out to the David Donk horse, New Matthew. Listen, if this was any other show, I'd probably pick that horse just because it shares my name. But we're not that type of show. We're not just picking horses because we like their names. This horse has not worked well. This horse and I would have very similar workout patterns. I'll just say that. So we'll see. I'm rooting for New Matthew, but New Matthew looks a lot like the old Matthew, which is not very fast, maybe. So we will see. Let's move to race number 5 on the card, which is a $40,000 claimer for 3-year-olds and up, going a mile on the outer turf course. And, this one, again, kind of an interesting race. I'll get to my value play in a second, who I really like mostly just underneath. Some of this, I'm going against Mike Maker, who's been a little bit cold. He's been okay up here. He's at 10%, but he's ice cold down in Kentucky. He's got a horse Decanted who's taken a class drop from Allowance Company and last ran at Kentucky Downs. Kendrick Carmouche aboard. Certainly is a capable horse. At 7-2, would not begrudge anyone. This feels like a very spready race to some extent. So I certainly understand someone using that horse. You look at the George Weaver horse, Time Song, taking a class drop from $80,000 optional claiming company, first time gelding. Weaver's dropping the horse in for the tag. That's actually not been quite as much success in terms of an angle for Weaver, in terms of dropping in for the tag, going along on the turf. So that's something to keep in mind. But, at 5-2, a little bit of a too short of a price for me to like with this one. This was also a horse that was a $375,000 purchase. Now, granted, was not Weaver's. Okay, we started out in Todd Pletcher's barn and then was transferred to Weaver. But this one for Rapoli Stable in St. Elias really looks like this one is, they're cutting their losses here with this one. This, made 57,000 career earnings, now dropping in for a tag for 40. It does feel like a pretty significant class drop. And sometimes I'm a little wary of horses making that big of a class drop and, where it's going to be a losing investment. Whereas Decanted, at least, is taking the class drop, but has already won 125,000 in earnings. You win this race, you get the claiming money for Maker. I certainly, from a financial standpoint, I can get it. Ultimately, I went to the number 4, Willing to Risk It All, 4-1 for Jose D'Angelo. This one is making a class drop essentially as well. If you look at the past performances, you go, well, Matthew, the horse ran for 40, an N2L 40 claimer last time out. Indeed, but it was rained off the turf and it was an off-turf race over a sloppy sealed track. I'm willing to just draw a line through that. Horse didn't run poorly. Horse can run okay on dirt. But nevertheless, keeps Flavian Pratt aboard. This one was a pretty good horse running against State Bred Allowance Company 2-3 races back. It was hitting the board against horses like Gem Mint 10 and Clear Conscience and stuff like that, Rhetorical. So this horse was running against some nice runners. Now is taking that first time against claiming company on the turf. I think that's an important distinction to make. This horse is stakes placed, actually ran third in the Richard Violette last year at Saratoga. Like I said, keeps Pratt aboard. That's an important one for me. D'Angelo is a trainer. I know 0 for 2 up here, but he's a trainer I really like a lot. And I just think in this spot could be pretty tough. Maybe you'll get a little bit more value than you might on Decanted or on the Weaver horse Time Song. Now, my value play in this one is strictly an underneath play, and that is a horse that loves to finish second, and that is St. Joe Louis. Listen, this horse at 10-1 presents outstanding value if you play this horse the right way, which is including this horses in your exactas and trifectas. I'm not betting this horse to win. Horse is 1 for 21 winning in his career. But you go back and look at how this horse has run against Claiming Company. Horse hits the board almost every single time. So this is one that I'm absolutely going to be using on my tickets in exactas and trifectas because you're getting past the top 3, 4, 5 choices to a horse that's 10-1. And even if you end up with a horse like Time Song winning, pair up with this one with an exacta with a St. Joe Louis, who's shown the ability to run well against this caliber of competition. I just think makes a lot of sense at 10-1. Johnny Velasquez aboard for Hennig. And again, different way of thinking about value. Not always thinking about it horizontally, but thinking about it vertically as well. Well, let's go to race number 6 on the card. And this is a tricky race. And I think that, it might be easy if you just take a very quick glance at this race to land on maybe the Chad horse, Capricious Outcome, who is trying turf for the first time, or you end up on the Clement horse, Hands of Time, who's back on the turf after running in an off-turf race last start. And I certainly wouldn't begrudge anyone for picking those two horses. I think they both are very logical in this spot. Clement has been a little cold. He's had some big wins, I will say, but it's 8 for 77 winning, only 10%. Rosario up on the mount there with Hands of Time at 3-1. And, the horses lost to nice horses like Papiamento, but, let's not make Papiamento into some amazing horse as well. So, it's kind of always attracted money each time out and kind of runs about, third, fourth, and it's a little bit one-paced. It doesn't really pass a lot of horses. So that was something I just noted kind of watching some of the replays back. The horse does pass some horses, but a lot of times it's other horses retreating and flattening out, and the horse does feel a little bit more one-paced than some of the other turf horses that you might see. Now, Chad has got Capricious Outcome, the number 7, trying turf for the first time. And normally, if you look at Chad's numbers, second out starters against maiden special weight competition, they're outstanding. I think over the last 5 years, he's at something like 29% with second out starters against maiden special weight competition. Yeah, 29%, 60% in the money. But here's the thing. If you go, well, let's go dirt to turf, all of a sudden that number plummets to 16%. And so I think that's something to consider. And then when you start going, well, what about sprint to route? Because that's what we're doing here. We're going from 7 furlongs to 2 turns. Suddenly the number drops to 14%, 4 for 28 over the last 5 years. So this is not necessarily as winning of a move as you would imagine. Now, the damn good turf pedigree there, absolutely. And this is the first foal. So, maybe just takes to the turf and everybody's running for second. But this one would have to move forward. Does get Flavian Pratt up. Manny Franco rode in debut. Ultimately, though, I went to the far outside. And this horse is going to have to work out a trip. No two ways about it. But I went to a Mike Maker horse with Dylan Davis aboard. Dylan's continued to have a very strong fall here at Belmont at the Big A after a great summer up at Saratoga. This one ran really well at Kentucky Downs in debut with Louis Saez aboard. I thought, finished third by a length to Warheart and then a horse, City of Oscars, who came back to win next time out. Going 7 furlongs at Kentucky Downs from a distance standpoint, usually those horses can stretch out and go even longer. Maker entered this horse into a stakes race in the second start based upon that debut effort, but it was rained off the turf, and ultimately the horse faded pretty badly. This one should just absolutely love the turf, and I think it presents a little bit of value and an alternative to your top selections. So, like I said, hard circle for me. Number 11 at 6-1 is my top choice. My value play in this one is a Pletcher horse, Puzzling, I'm sorry, the dam is puzzling. The Cipher is the name of the horse, and I quite a cute name actually, with puzzling as the dam. But this one's running in debut for Pletcher, Kendrick Carmouche up on the mount. The dam was all turf, puzzling. Does have a first out winner, and generally has done well with turf routers. So, 8 for 15 hitting the board in terms of all of her foals career, uh, doing well going along in the turf. Was the dam to a horse like Star Command, who was a nice horse who ran in the De La Rose a couple of years ago, was also the dam to Clever Thought, who ran in a grade 3 at Kentucky Downs last year, and is a pretty nice horse in and of its own right that Pletcher had. So this one has some good turf offspring, even as a horse like Mystifying, who actually just ran a really big race to Child of the Moon last time out for Shug McGahee on closing day at Saratoga. So, like I said, this one shows a lot of good turf offspring. I'm 10-1. I know the works are not going to overwhelm you, but here's the thing: works for Todd Pletcher horses rarely overwhelm you. When they do, you run to the window and bet them. But I'm willing to use this horse at 10-1, probably in my horizontals in kind of a late sequence, maybe a part of the pick six. That's a one that I think could really present a little bit of value there in this race. Well, let's get to the stakes races on the card. Let's go to the Bold Ruler. And this is a grade 3 going 6 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-olds and up. And I got to share a stat with you guys. And it's a stat that is pretty ridiculous, but it is reality. And so the stat is, over the last month, Brad Cox in stakes races is a whopping 71% winning. Over the last month, anywhere in the country, Brad Cox is winning 71% of his stakes entries and hitting the board 86% of the time with a $4.08 ROI. And then when you add in the fact that Flavian Pratt is up on the mount, he and Flavian Pratt during the last year at Belmont at the Big A have won 73% of their races together. It is with that in mind that the number 2 Top Gunner is my top selection at 8-5. I mean, right now, just betting against Brad Cox seems like a fool's errand. Whether it's here or down at Keeneland, where he's winning at 39%, and he's winning at 40% up here. I mean, he is on a heater right now. And he's on a heater at the right time, going into the Breeders' Cup, that's for sure. This horse won the Parks Sprint last time out down at Parks. And what I will say is, I know that this horse has great vision. And you say, Matthew, what do you know about a horse's vision? I was there that day at Parks for the very last race of the day, which was the Parks Sprint. And my God, I could barely see the finish line from where I was standing. It was almost pitch black. They barely got this race in time, but because Parks doesn't have any lights, they barely got this race in. This horse, came from off the pace. My buddies and I were watching this race. We joked nobody's going to pass anybody because we were being serious to some extent. We said, hey, this is kind of a dangerous race, because it's hard to see right now. And we thought, hey, everybody's going to get out. The jockeys are going to be careful. Nobody's really going to pass anybody. But you know who did pass everybody? Top Gunner. Top Gunner kind of sat more of a mid-pack tracking trip and then made a move and pulled away, beat a horse like 90% Matty, who's a pretty nice runner, I think. And this one has just taken on completely different form since coming to the Cox barn and has really stepped forward. So I think this one is pretty serious, 8-5. These are just connections you have a hard time betting against. From a value standpoint, Krista Hetrick has a real nice horse in here, and that is the number 5, My Buddy B. Like My Buddy B a lot. This horse won a stakes race down at Parks, actually, 2 back, and then lost in the grade 2 Phoenix. That was a really good field. Losing against a horse like Federal Judge and Nakatomi, those 2 horses are going to the Breeders' Cup Sprint. So, yeah, there's no harm in losing to those 2. You go back 3 back, this horse lost to Nakatomi and Skelly in the grade 1 Vanderbilt. So, it was a huge long shot both of those days. and ran like a huge long shot on both of those days. But in between, the horses won some big races and won some nice races at Parks, down up at Presque Isle, or at Mount NYRA, I should say, as well. So this horse has kind of traveled around, won some races, can sit from off the pace a little bit, can go to the lead, has some versatility there. I just think my buddy B at 5-1 is a little bit of an interesting horse in this spot. Um, a horse like Running Son of a Gun's a horse that I've always liked. The horse that I think is a big X factor in this race is the number 7, Scotland. Belmont is just ice cold right now. 2 for 53 up here at Belmont at the Big A, 4%. He's struggling everywhere. Even down in Kentucky, his horses are not running particularly well. Scotland is, coming back from running second in the Vosburg to Mufasa, who I think is a really, really nice horse and beat Dean Delivers that day. Ran well over a sloppy sealed track. Now is second back from a very brief layoff. Draws the far outside, 5-2. Maybe this horse, takes that step forward and gets a big win for Mott. But right now, I've just been avoiding Mott horses really until his barn starts heating up a little bit more. So, like I said, one that I have a hard time trusting necessarily in this spot. Also, if you look, yes, there's that race back at Saratoga where he ran a 98 buyer. Most of his races over the last year have been that high to mid 80s buyer, which nothing wrong with that. But Running Son of a Gun last time out ran a 95, or Top Gunner ran, I should say, a 95. And then my buddy Beaven has been running 91s, 97, 90s. So I'd rather go with super hot connections in terms of Cox and Pratt, or a horse that might present a little bit of value like my buddy B. Let's go to the next race, which is the 49er and grade 3 going a mile in the dirt. I'm going to take a shot with Belmont. I know I just said everything I did about Belmont, but sometimes you got to bet the horse and not the connections. And this is one that I think could be beneficial to bet 9-2. And the reason I like the horse's blinkers are coming on. We're trying something different here. Flavian Pratt up on the mount over Junior Alvarado. And Pratt, I like Pratt on this type of a horse. Blinkers are coming on is a really plus move for Belmont. And the reason that I'm going with this horse is the same reason if Scotland in the last race was 5-1. If Scotland was 5-1 in the last race, I'd make an argument, hey, Scotland's good value. Scotland at 5-2, I'm not interested in. If Jefferson Street was 5-2, would I be interested in him? No. But do I like Jefferson Street more than Repo Rocks? I do. Because, Repo Rocks, listen, I know he's back with Jamie Ness and, is probably going to gear up to run 100-plus buyer speed figure one of these days. Again, Messier is coming back from a little bit of a layoff. Stage Raider is not in the best of form. Winnett's not in the best of form. Nelson Avenue, I don't know what form to trust there from Wayne Potts. And the horse is switching off Lasix for the first time in a long time, though the horse did win and debut in Lasix. Coastal Mission is probably your horse to beat in this race and your morning line favorite at 5-2. Draws a little further outside and still has not won at Belmont at the Big A. He has won at Parks, has won at Charlestown, hasn't really won up here in New York. So, again, still think sometimes against this level of competition, I want to see something. Jefferson Street presents some value. Now, is he going to get bet down? Maybe, but I think people might get scared off by Mott's numbers as well. And this horse, the blinkers are coming on, should show a little bit more speed, already has good early speed, but should be able to sit either up on the lead or a nice tracking trip, which in the one-turn mile is kind of what you want to do. Horse has plenty of talent. I know he ran the big number in that allowance race going back to that Belmont Stakes Racing Festival weekend up at Saratoga. We saw a lot of those numbers come back inflated. Absolutely. And he came back down to earth next time out in the Amsterdam, but was also chasing lone early speed in world record that day. And then he steps up into the H. Allen Jerkins. That's just too tough of a competition for him, I think. And then I thought last time out ran a really nice race, finishing second to Henro in the Harrods Creek. I thought that was a really good effort and very comparable to what I hope to see here in terms of stalking it and tracking a pace and then finishing strong. I think it showed the horse can go a mile. And so at 9-2, I'm willing to use this one. Has been working out nicely for Mott as well, firing off a bullet back on October 5th, first of 88, up at Saratoga. So I think this one at 9-2 presents a little bit of value as an alternative to your top three choices, I should say. A value play in this race is number 8, Film Star. This is a horse that had some good form going back to last year for Linda Rice. Linda gets Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount. Irad's been on this horse the last couple of times out, including a win over the off-turf race, the Lure, that he won 2 back. Ran in that Parks Dirt Mile, lost to Coastal Mission and Repo Rocks. But I would also say that Parks Dirt Mile, I don't know if he necessarily likes that setup, and was hung a little bit wide, was coming from off the pace that day, which is not really his style. I think the one-turn mile here, the outside post position, I think this horse has been training pretty forwardly, particularly for Linda, who usually does not train her horses this fast. And Linda's heated up after a very cold Saratoga and even a cold start to this meet. Linda's racking up a lot of wins these days. Film Star at 6-1 with Irad aboard. Yeah, sign me up for that. I think that's good. There's good value there. Can this horse win? Yes. But I think this horse, more importantly, can provide value underneath in some vertical wagers. Well, let's go to the 9th race, which is a $62,000 optional claimer. And this one's going a mile and a 16th on the turf for 3-year-olds and up. And I'm going to go back to Irad on this one. And, there's a horse in this race, Dude in Colorado. Really like Dude in Colorado from Mike Maker. But that horse just doesn't win. The horse won the Colonel Liam back last March. Hasn't won since then. 0 for 5 this year. Hard for me to trust that horse at a shorter price. A horse like Ocean Atlantique, who's 9-2. This horse is 0 for 7 this year. Horse never wins. Title Forces at 3-1, I think, is a legit horse for Fernando Abreu with Pratt aboard. That one I certainly wouldn't begrudge anyone if they wanted to bet. Has a couple of wins down at Gulfstream Park over the synthetic. Hasn't won over the turf yet this year. So interesting to see that trend, and has actually been going the wrong direction in terms of those speed figures. Really ran a big race, 3 races back up at Saratoga. It's kind of regressed each time out after that. Irish Prophet was an interesting horse for Neil Drysdale, but that one's making a first start off a long layoff and trying the East Coast for the first time after running just out in California. So I'm willing to kind of give this one a race or two to see what happens. So ultimately, I ended up on the number 5 in this race, and that is Create Trouble for Rob Atras with Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount, taking over for Manny Franco. This one ran off the turf last time in a race that was supposed to go to the turf. And interesting career. This horse starts out with Brendan Walsh running against top caliber maiden special weight company. Ran against a horse like Loggins. Remember Loggins? Remember when everybody got excited about Loggins because he finished second to Forte in the Breeders' Futurity and then he was retired? Good times. Then runs second to Dennington, a nice Kenny McPeak horse. And starts to kind of regress a little bit after his third start for Walsh. Goes to Brittany Russell, who kind of drops him in class a little bit, runs him against, and off of a long layoff as well, runs him against some competition at Colonial, but was going to try to get him on the turf. And ultimately, the race gets rained off. Horse wins for fun that day, though. 6-horse field. Horse draws off wins by 8+ lengths. Then goes to the turf against N1X Allowance Company and wins for fun there. Then goes to Atras, and Atras tries to get this horse on the turf, but it gets rained off, and the horse ends up finishing 4th that day. Floki's Flight to Wonderful Justice, 2 horses that come back to win next time out, and then Magical Ways as well, who we'll get to in a second. But this one's now getting back on the turf. Only career start on the turf was outstanding. Showed great speed as well. You have Irad up. I just think this one presents some nice value for a horse that likes to win now. And maybe it's taken a little while and a little bit of maturing to get this horse on the right track. But Atras has been, running well this whole meet. 6 for 28 winning, 21%, 10 for 28 in the exactas, 16 for 28 in the trifecta. So his barn is firing on all cylinders right now. Now, my value play is the horse that I just mentioned, the number 3 Magical Ways, who finished second last time out in that off-turf race. But you go back and look at those 3 races against $62,000 optional claiming company back in this summer, May, June, and July. Those races are solid. And I know he finished behind like Title Forces and Ocean Atlantique, but those races are good enough to compete in this spot. running 89 and 90s on the turf. This horse has only had those 3 starts and has really not disgraced himself in any of those, running strong speed figures in each one of them. You know, maybe a little one paced on the turf, admittedly, but has enough early speed. I wonder if Mirage is a little bit aggressive here, trying to get this one out and maybe a little bit more forward. But I just think this one could be sitting on a little bit of a nice effort at 8-1 for Rudy. Admittedly, Rudy's been pretty ice cold, but it does have a lot of underneath finishes. So maybe this is one to include in your exactas and tries. All right, well, let's go to the Mother Goose, which is the feature race of the day. And I'm going to go back to Brad Cox and Flavian Pratt in the stakes race because that's just kind of what you're supposed to do, I think. With the number 3, Tarifa, who really has only run one bad race. She's run one bad race, which was the Kentucky Oaks. Other than that, she's not really run a bad race. She, probably should have won the Audubon Oaks against Fibber coming back from that Kentucky Downs effort, but I'm willing to forgive that. She did kind of the dirty work up front, pressing the pace, and then faded to a horse that came from off the pace that day. Last time out in the Cotillion, lost to Torpedo Anna, lost to Gunsong, who we'll get to in a second, but I thought still ran an okay race. We're going a little bit longer now. This is a horse that won the Fairground Oaks, won the Rachel Alexandra. Pratt and Cox are just so lights out together that it's hard for me to go against this one. Now, Gunsong, I am going to go against this one. The horse should be able to get up on the lead, and Johnny Velasquez on a speed horse is usually pretty deadly, as we saw last time out, pressing Torpedo Anna in that Grade 1 Cotillion. Here's my concern with Gunsong. And she's a Grade 2 winner, won the Black-Eyed Susan. But you're going from getting her at 44-1 last time out to now taking her at 8-5. Whoa. Those are some short odds for a competitive field, I feel like. I think Tarifa is a pretty nice horse that could run a really big race in the spot. And I know that Gunsong she's won at this distance before going a mile and an eighth. Hennig I trust him as a trainer, and him and Velasquez have obviously had success together with this horse. This horse is coming off of a huge effort, career best Beyer speed figure. I do wonder maybe if there's a little bit of regression this next time out. She ran her ass off in that race. I mean, she ran a huge race to almost beat Torpedo Anna, who's the best 3-year-old filly in the country. And so I do wonder maybe if there's a little bit of a bounce and a little bit. And I know, when we talk about bounce, sometimes that's a time parameter thing, but I just wonder if there's a little bit of regression. Maybe that race took the starch out of her a little bit. And I wonder maybe if next time out she goes back to running those kind of mid to high 80 Beyer speed figures, which if she does, Tarifa is more than fast enough to beat her. The horse that I'm really intrigued by is Life Talk. And by the way, they should probably rename this the Gunrunner Stakes. And you go, Matthew, why should they rename this the Gunrunner Stakes? Because Gunsong, Life Talk, and number 7 Headline News are all sired by Gunrunner. Sweet Jesus. It's crazy just how good he is as a sire, especially with his fillies and mares. But Life Talk's an interesting horse for me. And at 5-1, if you're going to fade Gunsong, I wouldn't be upset if you went 3-6 on your tickets if you're playing horizontally with Tarifa and Life Talk. This horse could take a step forward and was at one time very well thought of. Yes, absolutely rode a track bias and an easy lead to the victory in the Grade 2 Demoiselle, but ran 4th in that Breeders' Cup juvenile fillies last year to Just FYI, Jody's Pride and Candied. Finished 3rd in the Frisette to Just FYI in Central Avenue. Won 2nd start at Saratoga. Then wins that Demoiselle coming off the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies. Then goes off as a 2-5 favorite and runs about as bad of a race as you can imagine down at the Suncoast at Tampa Bay Downs. Now, admittedly loses to a horse like Power Squeeze, who we've underrated that time. Power Squeeze comes back to win the Grade 1 Alabama. Still, Power Squeeze, finished 8 lengths ahead of her. So it wasn't as if it was a close contest. Then Pletcher runs her in the Gazelle, where she's just absolutely nowhere in that race. So, now granted, that was a very strung out field, but still, it didn't really show anything. puts her on the bench from April until September, brings her back in the Seneca overnight, and she shows something that she hadn't really shown before, which was, other than in debut or her maiden breaking victory, she passed horses again. She hadn't really passed horses. If you looked at her running lines, outside of her maiden company, she was kind of a one-paced runner. And she suddenly starts passing horses again. Last time out at Churchill in the Seneca overnight, finishes second to Miss Justify, who is a nice horse, and beats a horse like Chadalas, who's another nice horse, I think. Second back now from a layoff. The fact Pletcher is stepping her up here tells me he sees something in her training. Speaking of her training, she's been working out nicely at Belmont. I think this one might have just needed some more time to develop. We sometimes forget gun runners have been so precocious that we forget that Gunrunner himself was a later developing horse. So I'm not stunned that Life Talk might take a little bit more time to develop. I think this horse is sitting on a big race. I really do. I'll be honest with you. I think this horse, I'm almost talking myself into this horse as my top pick. And if Tarifa gets over bet, she very, very well end up being. Well, let's wrap things up with a final race, $75,000, not a $75, $75,000 maiden special weight for 2-year-old New York bred fillies, going 6 furlongs on the turf. We're going to stay on the inside in this one. We're going to go to number 2, Disco Star from Mark Cassie with Dale and Davis aboard. This one ran well in debut at Saratoga over the turf. Last time out, ran in a race that got rained off, and still ran pretty well to Nina Kay. And more importantly, it had attracted a lot of money in that race before finishing second in an off-turf effort. I think he goes back to that debut race, really showed a nice turn of foot that day, and really, like I said, showed the ability to pass horses going 5.5 furlongs. I think stretching out to 6 makes a lot of sense. 3-1, if you can get anywhere near that price, I feel like is a really good value on this horse. In terms of my value play, I am going to go to the horse Twirling Lulu on the inside with Javier Castellano aboard for Bruce Levine. This one's getting blinkers put on. The inside rail should show speed. Showed a little bit of speed in debut on the dirt. Now switches over to the turf. I know from a pedigree standpoint, there's not a lot of turf underneath in this one at all. But, you're out of, you're sired by Twirling Candy. You should have some turf pedigree there. So that I'm not as worried about. You have that Candy Ride lineage that usually does well on the turf anyway. 12-1 on the morning line. I like the equipment change. I know you're losing Irad, but Javier's gotten off to a hot start since coming back. This one's also coming out of a race that produced Scythian, who ended up winning the Miss Grillo next time out, though that was a bizarre race in his own right. And this one was a little worked up behind the gate. Maybe that's something to pay attention to. Look at how this one's acting on the track. Lathered up? Is it worked up? Anything like that? Pay attention. But I think the blinkers on helps. Inside rail is going to kind of force the issue for Castellano. I think this horse goes straight to the front. May not look back. 12-1, I think you're getting outstanding value from Twirling Lulu. All right. Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it for Capping the Card. All 11 races for Saturday at Belmont at the Big A. Wishing you all the best of luck. Hope gave you some interesting ideas, some stuff to consider for those 11 races. Like I said, make sure to press that like button and subscribe to all the content that we have on the NYRA Bets YouTube channel. Until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you it's now post time.